Do you have the guts to solve this? Even the most powerful people can't solve it.
If you do it, I'll teach you for free and even give you 50 lakh rupees. I'll solve it. It was early morning. The sun hadn't yet fully risen. But the bustle outside the city's most prestigious school, Gyandeep World School, was already bustling. Large vehicles were stopping one after another at the gate. Children dressed in uniforms were alighting. Their bags were new, their shoes were shining, and their faces were filled with confidence. But a short distance from that gate, near a large pile of garbage, a thin boy was bent over. His name was Aryan, barely 13 years old. A torn sack in his hand, worn slippers on his feet, his shirt stained with old stains, and his hair looked as if it hadn't been combed in months. Aryan used to pick up garbage. Plastic, pieces of iron, sometimes discarded books. But today, his eyes were less on the garbage and more on the school windows. He was drawn to the sounds coming from inside the school. The sound of the chalkboard moving on the blackboard, the children's answers, the teacher's explanations. Aryan had never gone to school. His father drove a rickshaw. His mother washed dishes in homes. Making ends meet was a matter of life. Education wasn't a dream for them, it was a luxury. But Aryan was different. When he found old notebooks in the garbage, he wouldn't sell them. He kept them. He would solve problems on the walls with broken pencils. Add car numbers. He would create equations by taking numbers from shopboards. He considered numbers his friends. That day, as he stood near the school wall, a loud voice came from inside. This was a question no one in the entire city could solve. The voice belonged to the school principal, Mr. Arvind Chauhan. He was famous for his temper. Aryan moved closer to the grill. Inside, a special 12th grade math class was underway. A long, complicated mathematical problem was written on the board. Integral limits and some symbols that would make ordinary students panic. A female teacher said, "Sir, this question is university level. Children won't be able to solve it." Quote, the principal slammed his hand on the table. "If there's a genius here, prove it today. I'll give 50 lakh rupees to whoever solves it." Quote. Silence fell over the class. Aryan's eyes lit up. He knew the value of money. 50 lakh could transform his entire neighborhood. But something more had awakened within him. The question was calling out to him. He held the screen tightly. Numbers flashed before his eyes. His mind raced, and at that very moment, a garbage boy standing across the wall decided he would solve the question no matter what. The atmosphere inside the classroom was heavy. The question on the board looked like a puzzle. A long series of numbers, complex symbols, and a bold lettering at the bottom prove that this equation balances only at zero. Principal Arvind Chauhan stood confidently. His eyes held a challenge. Quote, "I've sent this question to the best professors in the country," he said loudly. "There's still no clear solution. If any student in this school can solve it, I'll reward them with 50 lakh rupees. Cash." Whispers rang out in the class. Some students had greed in their eyes, others fearful. Just then, the senior math teacher, Meera Mehra, rose from her chair. She was known for her strict nature. He said with a slight smile, "Sir, this question is for brilliant research scholars. Our children aren't at that level yet, and forget about some garbage picker standing outside." Some of the children in the class laughed. Aryan, standing outside the fence, had been listening. The words, rag picker, echoed in his ears. It hurt him, but he didn't get angry. It was strange. There was a peace somewhere inside. As if he knew that answers were given with actions, not words. The bell rang. Class ended. The children filed out. Some were taking photos of the board. Some were shaking their heads. Forget about 50 lakhs, he couldn't even understand the question. A student spoke. Aryan slowly walked to the back. He knew the guard would chase him away if he went in front. He knew the broken back gate of the school, where he sometimes picked up empty bottles from. That day, he finished picking up the garbage quickly. There wasn't much in the sack, but the same question lingered in his mind. When he got home, he threw the sack in a corner. His mother was coughing. His father was still there. They hadn't returned. Arian began drawing the same symbols on the wall with charcoal that he'd seen on the board. He tried to memorize each step. The limit below the integral, the sign of the logarithm of x to the power of x. He closed his eyes, and the board flashed before his eyes. Quote, "Prove that only zero balances," he muttered. "If everything balances at zero, then the beginning must be there." The night deepened. Outside, the city fell asleep. But deep inside a slum, a ragpicker struggled with math. He had to win back his honor, more than 5 million rupees. It must have been around midnight. The slum was quiet. The sound of dogs barking could be heard somewhere in the distance. Arian's eyes were empty of sleep. The equations written in charcoal on the wall had blurred. He repeated the same steps again and again, but something was lingering. The limit must be changed, he told himself. Suddenly, he remembered. There was a small term on the board that the other children had probably overlooked. That was the key. His heart pounded. His heart started pounding. He sat up. He felt the answer was close. Very close. But he had to see the real board. The entire question in clear letters. He looked at his mother. She was asleep. His father hadn't returned yet. Arian slowly stepped outside and ran towards the school. The Gyandeep World School building looked even more majestic at night. High walls, a shining gate, and a sleeping guard in front. Arian quietly went to the back where the broken grill was. He entered through there. His steps were light, as if walking on air. The classroom window was half open. He peeked inside. It was dark, but the dim light of a street light fell directly on the blackboard. The entire question, right there, filled his heart. He jumped inside. The room smelled faintly of chalk. Wooden benches were decorated. The huge board in front looked like the peak of a mountain. Arian slowly walked to the teacher's table. There was a small chalkboard lying there. He picked it up. This was the first time he had ever held a chalkboard on a real blackboard. His hands trembled. For a moment, he was afraid of being caught. But then he had a second thought. If he didn't, he looked at the blank space below the board and began writing. The first step, then the second, then the third. His breathing was fast, but his mind was calm. As he progressed, the question began to unravel. He understood that the real trick lay within the integral. Changing the limit would shrink the entire equation. He began writing faster. The only sound in the room was the chalkboard. Time passed. After about 2 hours, the entire board was filled. Finally, he drew a box and wrote the answer in it. He moved the zero back. The question, which had seemed like a mountain, now looked like a straight line. Arian's eyes sparkled. He put the chalk back, jumped out the window, and disappeared into the darkness. He had no idea what the morning would bring. He only knew he had done his job. At exactly 8 a.m., Principal Arvind Chauhan entered the class with quick steps. Behind him were Mira Madam and some senior teachers. The decision was to be made today. So the principal sarcastically asked the children, who won the 50 lakh rupees. The entire class was silent. Topper Raghav stood up. Quote, "Sir, we tried. But this question is beyond our scope." Mira Madam nodded as if she already knew the answer. The principal turned to the board, and the next moment, his steps stopped. The entire board was filled with clear, ordered steps from bottom to top. Every change was logical, every line connected. The class erupted in commotion. Quote, "Who did this?" The principal slowly stepped forward. He adjusted his glasses and began reading each step, one by one. His face was changing. Quote, "This is it." Mira Madam came closer. She read the 5th step, then the 7th, then the 12th. Her eyebrows furrowed. Quote, "Sir, we never taught this method." The principal took a deep breath. But it's not wrong. He looked at the zero written in the last box. There was silence for a few seconds. Then he softly said, "This solution is correct." The whispers in the class grew louder. "Who did it?" The principal's voice was stern now. "Tell me the truth, this isn't a joke." Everyone looked at each other. No one came forward. Then a student said, "Sir, the board was empty yesterday when we left." Mira Madam immediately, "Sir, this must have been done by an outsider. Our children don't have that much understanding, and if someone sneaked in at night and vandalized the board, it's a major security lapse." The principal's face hardened. "Check the CCTV," she ordered. Within minutes, the footage was playing in the staff room. At 2:47 a.m., a small shadow appeared on the screen, jumping in through the window. Torn clothes, a thin figure. Mira Madam immediately said, "This is the same garbage picker boy who hangs out at the gate every day." The principal carefully examined the screen. The boy was standing in front of the board. He was writing rapidly. He didn't stop, didn't panic. The footage ended. The room fell silent. Mira Madam said in a cold voice, "Sir, this boy can't solve this question. He must have copied from somewhere." The principal's eyes deepened. "Find him," she said, and at that very moment, the fate of a garbage picker was about to knock on the door. About half an hour later, 2 guards arrived at the school, carrying Aryan. He was terrified. He was holding the same old sack. Quote, "Sir, I didn't steal anything," he kept saying over and over. All the teachers were sitting in the staff room. Principal Arvind Chauhan was sitting in the chair in front. Mira Madam was standing next to him. A stern expression was evident on his face. Quote, "What's your name?" the principal asked. Aryan replied softly, quote, "Why did you enter the school at night?" Aryan remained silent. "Speak up," Mira Madam's sharp voice echoed. "Kids like you come to steal, not to study." Tears welled up in Aryan's eyes. "I didn't come to steal, madam. That question wasn't letting me sleep. I just wanted to see him." He began to write again. Mira Madam laughed, quote, "Sir, look, you're making up a story. Such a big question, and this," the principal said calmly. "If you wrote it, explain it right now in front of everyone." Aryan looked at her nervously. "Let me try," he said softly. He was led into the classroom. All the children were sitting as if some kind of scene was about to happen. Some were whispering, quote, "This is it." Aryan paused at the door. "Come," the principal said. He stood in front of the board. The steps he had written last night were still clear. The principal handed him the square. Quote, "Start here." He pointed to the 4th step. "This is where the real twist comes." Mira Madam folded her arms. "Let's see." Aryan took a deep breath. Then the limit of the integral was seen in the wrong direction, he said softly. The class fell silent. Quote, "If we shrink x from negative infinity to positive infinity and around 0, the whole idea inside shrinks." He continued writing. His voice was no longer trembling. Quote, "Then this term, it cuts itself off." And here he wrote the next step. The principal's eyes widened. Mira Madam's face turned from stern to serious. Aryan reached the last line and said, "This entire equation finally balances out to 0. The square fell to the floor. The class fell silent. No one was laughing anymore. The faint sound of the square falling echoed throughout the room. Aryan bowed his head, hoping someone would tell him he was wrong. But nothing happened. Principal Arvind Chauhan slowly moved forward. He read the board again. Then he looked at Aryan. Quote, "Where did you learn this method?" Aryan asked hesitantly. "I couldn't find it completely in the books, sir. I would add the parts individually. Sometimes I would find an old guide, sometimes a puzzle in the newspaper. I would think of the rest myself." Mira Madam had been silent until now. She suddenly asked, "What happens if we put the value here?" It was a trick question. Many students in the class were stuck at this point. Aryan answered without looking at the board. Quote, "Then the balance will be disturbed, madam, because putting a breaks the symmetry. That's why the limit has to be kept around 0. Mira Madam's face changed color. The students in the class looked at each other. The principal took a deep breath. Quote, "Do you know what I said?" Aryan nodded slowly. "Whoever solves this question will get 50 lakh rupees." The class was stirred. Mira Madam immediately said, "Sir, wait a minute. This boy is not a student of this school." "Rules don't outweigh talent," the principal said sternly. The room fell silent. She announced it to everyone. Quote, "From today, this boy is a student of this school. On a full scholarship, and as for the reward," she paused for a moment. "I will keep my promise." Arian couldn't believe it. "Sir, I don't want money," he said softly. "I just want to study." For the first time, the principal's eyes softened. Quote, "You'll study, and we'll take responsibility for your home." The students in the class wore different expressions. Some were embarrassed, some were surprised. Mira Madam said softly, "Maybe I misunderstood you." Arian looked at her. "It's okay, madam." He smiled and said, "I didn't know everything either." There was no arrogance in his smile. It was just simplicity, and in that moment, the youngest boy in the largest class at Gyeondeep World School had become the oldest. Even after the announcement, the real test was yet to come. The next day, a special assembly was held in the school auditorium. Arian was to be formally declared a student in front of the entire school. The students were excited, some still whispering, "A garbage collector will study with us." Principal Arvind Chauhan stood on the stage, accompanied by Mira Mehra. "Today," the principal said into the microphone, "we're not just welcoming a student. We're acknowledging that talent needs no recognition." Then he called Arian to the stage. Arian was in a clean uniform, his hair neatly cut, but the sparkle in his eyes remained the same. Applause erupted, first slow, then faster. The principal said, "I promise to donate 50 lakh rupees. This amount will be deposited in a trust in Arian's name." The entire hall erupted in applause for his education, his family, and his future. Mira Mehra came forward. She took the microphone. Quote, "Yesterday I said he couldn't ask that question. I was wrong. As a teacher, I must admit it." She turned to Arian and said, "You taught us never to judge someone by their clothes or circumstances." Arian simply said, "Madam, if I had been allowed to see the board, I would have told you earlier." A light laugh echoed through the hall, but the story wasn't over. After the assembly, some students approached him. Raghav, the previous topper, asked, "Can you explain that integral part to me again?" Arian smiled. "Let's explain it right now." He was now standing in the middle of the class, but this time he wasn't the butt of jokes. When he returned home that evening, like a guide, the people of the neighborhood surrounded him. Quote, "Is that true? You really will go to school?" He grabbed his mother's hand and said, "Amma, I won't just pick garbage anymore. I'll pick questions." Tears welled up in his mother's eyes. That night, for the first time under the slum roof, fear didn't shine through. Hope slept. But the real battle of life had just begun. And Arian was ready. A few months passed. The same class at Gyeondeep World School, the same blackboard, but now there was a difference. A boy sitting on the first bench who had once stood outside the wall. Arian was now a regular student. Initially, he struggled with English. Adjusting to the new environment wasn't easy. Some children still kept their distance. But in math class, the picture was different. Whenever a difficult question came up, everyone's eyes would turn to one another. Quote, "Arian, you try," he would stand up. One day, Mira Mehra told the entire class that Arian would explain today's question. This was the same teacher who had said he couldn't. Arian stood in front of the blackboard and solved the question. But this time, he didn't just give the answer. He explained each step. Quote, "If you're afraid, the question will seem bigger," she said. If you break it into pieces, it will become easier." The class was listening attentively. Principal Arvind Chauhan stood behind him, a look of satisfaction on his face. Soon, Arian won the state-level mathematics competition. The news was published in the newspapers. A math star emerged from the slum. But when the journalist asked, "How did you feel when you received 50 lakh rupees?" Arian replied, The biggest wealth I received was a school board on which I could write. Gradually, more children from his slum began to enroll in the school. The principal started a new initiative, a special scholarship for needy, talented children. Mira Madam often said, "We should see the potential in every child, not the lack." One evening, Aryan stood on the school roof. The sun was setting. He remembered his old sack that he had thrown in the dustbin. He smiled. Poverty didn't stop him. People's words couldn't break him. He had understood that true wealth doesn't come from money. True wealth comes from intelligence and courage. And that day, when he solved another difficult problem, he felt happier than 50 lakh rupees because now he wasn't just solving a problem. He was changing a mindset, and perhaps that's the greatest victory any human being can have. If this story touched you, please like it. Subscribe to our channel to hear more inspiring stories like this one, and don't forget to click the bell icon. And yes, please leave a comment with the name of your city or village. Let's see how far our story has reached. Your small comment could be a great inspiration for someone else.